I hadn't even finished unloading the moving truck when it happened. This woman I'd never seen before stormed across my lawn, snatched the deed copy I was showing my neighbor, and tore it into shreds like it was tissue paper. Pieces of my property papers fluttered through the air like confetti, and she leaned in close, with this fake smile snarl, and hissed. 90 days to comply with HOA rules, or you're out. The kicker? My house wasn't even in her HOA. That was the first 5 minutes in what I thought was my dream home, and it felt like stepping straight into a nightmare. My name's Daniel Miller. I'm a structural engineer, husband to Sarah, dad to 2 kids, Maddie and Jack. I worked 15 years for this house, the place I promised my family would finally be ours. No landlord, no thin apartment walls, no constant noise above or below us. A patch of grass, a white fence, a pool. We thought we'd made it. The morning we moved in, Sarah was humming while setting up our kitchen. Maddie and Jack were running barefoot through the backyard, screaming with joy, laughing like kids are supposed to. And then this white Cadillac Escalade screeched into my driveway, and out stepped Deborah Clark. She was HOA president of Maple Hills down the street, dressed like she was running for office. Navy blazer, stiff helmet hair, jangling jewelry that could blind a pilot. The second she opened her mouth, I knew peace wasn't on her agenda. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she cooed. And then, without taking a breath, she shifted to attack. 90 days to comply, or you're gone. When I tried to ask what she meant, she tore up my deed copy right there. Neighbors saw it, and instead of calling her insane, they nodded like she was the law. My chest burned with disbelief. I dialed 911, explained that my documents had been destroyed by a stranger claiming authority. The dispatcher's voice was flat. "Is there a physical threat, sir?" I said no, just intimidation. "Then it's a civil matter. We'll send someone in a couple hours." A couple hours. By the time a cop finally came, Deborah had already made her victory lap around the block, whispering lies, dropping official, looking notices on my porch, and smiling like she owned me. The officer shrugged and told me I could file a claim for the torn photocopy. A photocopy. That's what the system cared about. That night, Sarah asked, "Daniel, are you sure we didn't miss something in the purchase agreement? What if she's right?" That question terrified me more than Deborah's theatrics, because I had checked every line of the contract. But what if there was a loophole? Maddie asked me if the lady was going to make us move. Jack asked if we were in trouble. I wanted to tell them the world was fair, that we were safe. Instead, I sat there silent, pretending to be confident when inside. Doubt gnawed at me. The harassment kept coming. One morning, I found our pool filled with chemicals and chunks of cement. The water cloudy like chalk. No swimming for the kids. No peace of mind for me. Mail stopped arriving. Turned out she'd told the carrier our house number had been reassigned. Notices appeared on the door citing architectural violations and environmental non-compliance. They looked real. Embossed seals, legal jargon, reference numbers. As an engineer, I could tell they were fake, but they were good fakes. Neighbors couldn't tell. They believed her. David, the guy next door, pulled me aside one evening. He was retired law enforcement, eyes tired, voice low. "She did this to me last year. I lost my house in 89 days. Don't underestimate her." That hit me like a gut punch. If a detective couldn't stop her, how could I? Later that night, after Sarah and the kids were asleep, I sat at the table staring at the fake notices scattered like puzzle pieces. My head dropped into my hands. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd brought my family into a fight we couldn't win. Maybe the safest thing was to pack up and run before the kids got scarred. The thought made me sick. But for a moment, I wanted to give in. Sarah found me there, hunched over, drowning in doubt. She laid her hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "If we leave, she wins, and she'll do this to another family, and another. We can't hand her that victory." Her words broke through the fog. I realized this wasn't just about us. It was about stopping a predator who thrived on fear. That was the turning point. I wasn't going to let her dictate my family's life. Not now. Not ever. Deborah escalated. She hired a fake inspector who showed up with a clipboard, test kit, even a badge, claiming my pool threatened county groundwater. I called the actual county office. They didn't know the guy. And they told me impersonating an officer was a federal crime. Deborah organized a safety meeting at the community center. 40 neighbors in folding chairs, while she ran a PowerPoint on how my family was ruining property values. Charts, graphs, emotional appeals. It was manipulative theater at its best. I sat there fuming. But Sarah, my journalist turned teacher, leaned over and whispered, "She's using propaganda tactics. I know the playbook." Then, like divine timing, a woman in heels strode into the meeting. "Excuse me," she said, voice like a gavel. "I represent the Miller family. Let's discuss document fraud and impersonation." Her name was Angela Reed, an attorney who specialized in HOA abuse. The room went still. Deborah's face froze in that plastic smile. Angela flipped through documents, showing neighbors how the seals were pressed with household tools, how the reference codes were nonsense, how the addresses traced back to residential garages. Gasps spread. Deborah lunged for the papers, tripped on a cord, and her laptop projected onto the wall. A folder appeared. Miller Eviction Plan, Phase 2. Silence. Neighbors' eyes widened. Deborah scrambled, shrieking about privacy, but the mask had slipped. Everyone had seen her blueprint. From there, everything unraveled. Rachel had already run a sting, pretending to admire Deborah's leadership. She got her bragging on tape about pushing families out. David handed over recordings of her admitting she'd done it before. Angela tied it all to a developer named Brooks Realty, who profited every time Deborah forced a family out. Suddenly, this wasn't neighborhood drama. It was organized fraud. The trial was a circus. Deborah showed up in a wrinkled blouse, dragging a cardboard box of nonsense papers, trying to represent herself because no lawyer would stick around. She rambled about conspiracies, waved fake notices, accused me of being a federal plant sent to ruin her. The judge cut her off again and again. Angela presented evidence like a blade, forged documents, impersonated officials, bank records showing payments from the developer, recordings of her confessions. Families from 3 different communities testified. They'd all been victims of her schemes. And then Deborah snapped. She stood up, screaming, grabbed a handful of papers and hurled them at the judge, yelling about property rights and government plots. Bailiffs restrained her while the courtroom stared in stunned silence, watching her melt down. I didn't feel triumph. I felt hollow relief. The woman who'd terrorized us, who'd made my kids afraid in their own home, was stripped bare for everyone to see. A desperate fraud drowning in lies. The judge handed down the verdict, guilty on fraud, harassment, conspiracy, 18 months probation, 75 grand restitution. Barred from HOA roles forever, for someone who thrived on fake authority. Losing her title was the ultimate punishment. As we left the courthouse, Deborah was escorted out another door, hair disheveled, eyes darting, muttering to herself. She looked nothing like the queen of the cul-de-sac she pretended to be. Neighbors who once nodded at her power now avoided her eyes, ashamed. For the first time since moving in, I felt like the ground under my feet was solid, that this house was truly ours. The fight had nearly broken me. There were nights I wanted to give up, mornings I doubted everything. But standing there, I realized predators like Deborah only win when we stay silent. Once the lies are exposed, their whole empire crumbles. That was the real victory. Not just keeping my house, but proving she couldn't destroy families unchecked. And that's the story I wanted to tell. Because if you're ever in a battle like mine, remember, truth, persistence, and refusing to bend are stronger than any fake authority. This is Daniel Miller, and the lesson I carry with me now is simple. Bullies don't get the final word, not when you fight back. The takeaway? Predators thrive on fear, but when you shine a light on their lies, they fall apart. And that's why I share my story on HOA Drama Unfolded.